host, Nick Olsen, Managing Director of Cornerstone International Alliance. This podcast is your go-to resource for the latest industry trends and strategies to help you level up your M&A practice. As always, we bring in masterminds who are experienced, knowledgeable, and gracious enough to share how they have exceeded in the world of M&A with you guys as our listeners. So I'm excited about today's guest. He has over 20 years of professional experience. On top of that, he found the time to go ahead and get 2 accounting degrees, 2 law degrees, and his experience has positioned him to be a strong leader in business development, investment banking, succession planning, and ESOP implementation. And today we are going to hit on the last topic, ESOPs. Please welcome my guest today, Vice President with Corporate Transition Consulting, Jeremy Huish. Jeremy, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks,
being
Nick.
on
Glad to be
my
here.
show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for allowing me to be here.
Awesome. So we recently met through a mutual contact, and love the work that you guys are doing. And I thought, what better way to share that with people like us, like all of our members, and to bring you on the podcast. So, like I said, appreciate you joining us. I hit on a couple of your professional accomplishments, which are very admirable. But tell us a little bit about your background. What you where you came from and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I started out working for one of the big 4 accounting firms and found that the best tax work has been done by the attorneys. So about 30 years ago, went to law school. And then they hired me back. I was in the Washington, D.C. National Tax Office. And then, like many that go to law school, you want to try your hand at being a lawyer. So I spent 5 years at a law firm advising some of the largest banks in the world about some of their international tax issues. But I realized that consulting middle market is where I wanted to be. And so I moved into that space. And for a lot of my career, I was busy helping very, very profitable companies, and that's who pays taxes, with just tax matters. And then I started noticing that a lot of my clients were being sold off to these things called ESOPs, employee stock ownership plans. And that piqued my curiosity. So about 9 or 10 years ago, started getting more into that. And eventually I jumped both feet in and focused my practice right now in that space. And so, so I still know a thing or two about taxes, but if I do my job right, not only does the business owner get to save a bunch of taxes when they sell their business, but I also benefit all the employees that probably would never have a chance to own a business, would never have a chance to have some of that American dream or a small slice of that pie that's being created. Mm-hmm. And so that's what generates my motivation every day to go and do this, is that I can help the business owner that I was trained to do. But if they go down this path, then everyone else benefits as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that great work that you do. And like I said, yeah, helping people realize the American dream is always a good way to get up in the morning and stay motivated and do right by your clients. So appreciate that. So Corporate Transition Consulting, you're a VP there. Tell us a little bit about the services that you guys provide, the type of clients you work with, and all about what you guys do there.
Oh, sure. Corporate or CTC, or Corporate Transition Consulting, we primarily help clients do the analysis, feasibility study, and implementation of ESOPs. That's our core of what we do. We stick to our lane, and because we do that, that allows us to work with other professionals that have other emphasis, so we don't try to venture outside of what we do there. Our clients range all the way from Hawaii all the way to the East Coast, but they stay inside the United States. From as small as $10 million companies as large as $1 billion companies. And so right now on my deck, I do have public companies we work with, but most are going to be privately held middle market companies.
Mm-hmm. And so, just for the purpose of the conversation, tell our listeners, I know a lot of them may know, but, what is, an ESOP, I guess, just from the, simplest of terms, or the simplest of explanations, just to set the tone for the conversation today.
Sure. So an ESOP, there's a couple different ways I can approach this question. For one, it's a qualified retirement plan sponsored by the company, similar to a 401k. Now, since your audience are M&A advisors, M&A professionals, it is a competitor in some ways into what they are doing because they're trying to find an exit solution or a buyer for their client's business. That's either private equity, strategic buyer, or a competitor that can come in and pay a strong price for that. And they would look at an ESOP as competition because they don't sell to ESOPs. They sell to outside third-party buyers or be able to do a management buyout or something. But that's so again, the technical definition, it's a qualified plan. There's some tax benefits with it. But from a professional standpoint, it is another buyer out there. When you look at the range of where can you exit a company, well, a business owner can gift it to children, can sell it, a management buyout to key management, can sell it to the employees through this thing called an ESOP, or can do an outside sale or an outside auction or a strategic buyer. So it is one of the ranges that is there.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to dive more into that too in a second. But, in our past conversation, I've heard you say, the largest M&A firms kind of have their own in-house ESOP department. We're talking today about the lower middle market. So, like you said, 10 to, probably 50, 100 million in revenue size companies, for,
right.
There's a lot of definition of what lower middle market is, but, so typically shops like people in our group don't have their own ESOP department. So that's kind of where you guys can step in when, on an as needed basis, correct?
That's right. We are a large portion of my referrals come from investment bankers and business brokers that don't have their own in-house. So if you look at like a Houlihan Lokey or a Capstone Partners, they're large enough and have enough deal flow because ESOPs don't fit every deal. And so it's just a small segment of the larger span of just M&A deals out there, but they're large enough so that they have enough to support an ESOP practice. But your smaller shops that are out there that still do great work with great companies, but they don't have enough deal flow to support their own in-house ESOP shop. And that's where my firm comes in, is we're the outsourced group that comes in and partners with them to do an ESOP transaction for their clients.
So, you mentioned previously that, in the M&A world, people might see ESOPs as a competitor. But, when do you guys get involved typically? I guess two-part question. When do you guys get involved? And when should an M&A advisor seriously consider an ESOP as an option for their client?
Oh, sure. Well, there's really two entry points to bring me in. And the first and the more common is that I'll call it a failed M&A deal. And so the investment banker, business broker, sell-side advisor, what have you, they're under contract with their client and they've tried to find a deal, and it's now gone 18 months, 24 months, and the client is frustrated. They're tired of paying all those monthly retainer fees or what have you, and they haven't been able to find something. And so the professional is faced with, what do I do now? Because the client is frustrated. I haven't produced a deal and I can't find one, not one. And so I'm going to walk away from a transaction fee. And so they bring me up and say, well, what about an ESOP? Because what I can do is I can create a buyer, and I can create a buyer that can buy it at a fair market value price, not a strategic price, but certainly a fair market value price, which is fair out there. And we can get a deal done in 4 to 6 months. And so often I like to tell the joke that I am the second choice to the prom. I'm not their first choice to the dance. They're trying to sell it a strategic at a high price and great covenants and great terms and no clawbacks, and they want to do all of that. But if they can't do it, they can't find their right choice to the prom, they bring me in as a backup, and I can get the deal done. And so that would be the first option, the more common one that I'm brought in, and we get the deal done. The second way I'm brought in is that you're marketing and you come across a client that's just an ideal fit for an ESOP. And then the client, they've already vetted different options and they want to go ESOP. And so the investment banker has probably invested about 30 minutes into this client and knows that he can't do anything. He knows that this client's going to go to an ESOP. And so the question is, well, do you want to control that conversation and steer them towards me, or just say, sorry, we can't help you? and then just left the client to go out and Google an ESOP professional and try to find it there. And in that situation, the investment banker says, well, I know Jeremy and we'll do a split fee arrangement, so I'll send him towards Jeremy.
So there's kind of a lot to unpack there. What you just mentioned, the investment banker, the advisor knows within a 30-minute conversation that this client is not a good option for them to do a full sale, but they might be a good candidate for an ESOP. I guess can you what are the things that you see or hear from investment bankers that are saying, or maybe from your own experience, that why is a candidate not good for an M&A transaction but is for an ESOP? Like, what are the components?
Oh, sure. So if we think about circles and overlapping, what's a good general M&A for strategic and private equity, and what's a good ESOP, there are overlaps there. So there are some businesses, and many of them, that could go either way. But based on your question, let me go steer towards the ones that really only fit into the ESOP camp. Because let's be honest, if you come across a deal that could go either way, the investment banker is going to pitch the third party sale because that's where they get their fees. And I have no problem with that. That's just the way it is. But let's talk about the ones where it really makes sense to do an ESOP and they know within 30 minutes or so that they're not going to have a chance. And so let's talk about the fact patterns. One is, let's say they have just such a unique type of fact pattern of a business, maybe unique manufacturing or something else that you just already know that there's not going to be many good buyers. Let's take construction, for example. It is really hard to go find for a 2 million EBITDA or 5 million EBITDA construction company, many outside buyers that want to come out there and do that because they say, why should I buy it? Now there are out there, but it is hard to find them, whereas an ESOP may be a nice option for that. Or you may come across a client that says, I really want to pass this on to my top generals in my business, and I want them to run it. I want them to control it. But at the same time, I want to get access to the cash and all the wealth that I built up. How do I do that? Well, if you sell to an outside buyer, while they may say that, we're going to be hands off, but they still own the company. They'll still control it. They'll still at some point have the option to go fire your person and put in somebody else. That's what's going to happen once you are gone. Or they may say, I really want to pass this on to my children, but I don't want to gift it to them. I want to sell it, but I want to keep the company within the family and with at least the control. And so for those types of fact patterns where they say, I want to benefit my children, my employees, my key person, and that is just prime importance to what they do, that really speaks to an ESOP. But I'll tell you what doesn't speak to an ESOP. If someone says, I want the most money possible as fast as possible and walk away on day 2, that's probably not an ESOP transaction, because an ESOP does require some time usually to get it done. And but deep pockets are found in not ESOPs, but are found in private equities.
So you mentioned the timeline for an ESOP. I thought you said 4 to 5 months. Is that typical timeline for when you get connected with the client to when that transaction might close? Is that typical timeline?
Yeah, correct. That is typical. If they're ready to go, and usually if they've been working with another sell-side advisor, they have all the documents stored in a data room. Everything for due diligence is ready to go. And then we can turn it on, go interview the ESOP trustees, get the lawyers involved, do the negotiation, and have the deal done in 4 to 5 months, and funding done by then. Whether we need bank funding or internal funding or seller financing, we can get that all done. If they don't have any of that, well, this group of professionals know how long does it take for your clients to gather all that due diligence. It could take months. And so just add on whatever that due diligence time takes to this clock, and that's how long it takes.
Yeah, gotcha. And you mentioned the first way that M&A advisors would consider an ESOP is that the deal has gone, like I said, 10, 12, 14, 18 months, whatever the case may be, and they're just not getting the traction in that. From the investment bankers that you've talked to and worked with and got referrals from, why are those companies, based on it becoming a good candidate for an ESOP, what things are you seeing in those transactions, or lack of, they're not getting the deal done, that require, that it's like, okay, now ESOP might be good? good fit, what are the things that you guys are seeing or talking about that are kind of, like you said, the fact patterns of transitioning from the sell side to an ESOP because that didn't work out initially?
Oh, sure. So you're asking why does the deal, why is it a failed transaction?
Yeah,
And
what's causing it to be a failed transaction to make it a good candidate for an ESOP?
yeah. It's going to be a variety of things, and this does happen more than we think. I think I've talked to some various ESOP shops. I'm sorry, strike that, rewind. I've talked to various investment banking shops,
Hmm.
and I say, well, how many failed deals? And if they don't know me well, they don't know what I'm talking about. They'll say, oh, all of our deals closed. And then once you get to know them and really dig into their clientele and what they've been doing, they say, yeah, we've got. And truthfully, it's about 30% of M&A deals that they are out there pitching and that they get engaged to do, they cannot find a buyer for.
Hmm.
And why can't they find a buyer? Well, let me go through a few reasons, but this audience here knows us very well. If they've been doing M&A for many years, they know why clients just doesn't work. No, maybe they don't have a good successor management. Maybe the client sees the terms and conditions and the reps and warranties and gets turned off. Maybe it's the bait and switch that happens when the buyer comes in. Maybe it's been promised too high of a sale price, and you're promising a 6x and it should be a 3x or a 4x in terms of a multiple. And then the client has expectations set here, and you're bringing them offers down here, and you can't deliver that type of thing. Like I had one I'm working on right now, huge company, and they do um, they do a lot. Let's just say a large amount of EBITDA a year. So they're definitely in the higher middle market size, not a lower middle market company.
Hmm.
And they went out to a over 100 different companies that they looked at and only got one offer. And they looked at that and it wasn't something good. It's because it's just unique. It's a good company, makes profit, strong profit every year, but it's just unique, and no one was willing to step up and pay the price that needed to be done. And
Hmm.
with the terms and all the other things that come with it, because each deal has some hair on it, and it's just who's willing to do that. But in an ESOP context, you're leaving the management team in place. You're bringing in an outside financial buyer, which is the ESOP, which is really self-financed. And so they're willing to deal with the hair as long as the seller has a plan in place to handle that, which normally they would. And so, but again, I'm probably rambling on too long for your question, but there's just to recap, a variety of reasons. This audience, those that are experienced, are well aware of those, and there's different ones that are out there, and that's where I can come in and say, let's partner together and get a deal done for your clients.
Hmm. Are there, yeah, that was a great answer. Are there any industries that you're seeing that, maybe more prevalent to an ESOP as an option?
Oh, sure. Let me tell you the popular industries and the non-popular industries. And so the popular industries would be manufacturing is number one.
Hmm.
Probably close to 25% of all ESOP deals are in some flavor of a manufacturing type of company. Engineering, professional services, number two. Constructions, number three or four in there. And those are some of the popular ones. I've done grocery stores. I've done processing companies, transportation companies. Who is not good for would be like a small dentist office, a small doctor office, a small law firm, because those are heavily tied to one or two people. And when they leave and retire, then
Yeah.
the revenue goes, it may not stay with that business. It would go someplace else. And
Hmm.
so, but big ones could work. For example, BDO, the big accounting firm, just did an ESOP for $1.3 billion. That's billion. They sold a minority stake in their company to an ESOP. So here you have one of the largest accounting firms in the country that certainly they have a plenty of people to run the numbers and see, does this make sense? And it did.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
they have a good expertise in ESOPs, ran it, and it was a large transaction that hit the news a few months ago.
You had mentioned, taking, like I said, the maybe it's the whatever way an M&A advisor, investment banker realizes that an opportunity is not right for a sell side transaction. It's more for an ESOP. A lot of times I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong in your experience, sometimes they'll say, it's just not a good fit. we're going to walk away, or maybe they refer them on to, if it's a smaller deal, maybe a business broker, or, instead of just, I guess my point is, instead of walking away, um, as another option, bringing in someone like yourself to give the client another option to sell. And how does that work? When you work with an M&A advisor, because you walk away, say, we're just not a good fit. You're not, you know, monetizing that at all, right? But I know we talked. There's some fee sharing opportunities that you guys work with and for with those opportunities. So kind of explain that for us if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Let me take the second option first. So you spend 30 minutes with somebody and you say, well, I could just let them Google and find somebody, or I can enter in a referral fee agreement with CTC and Jeremy over there, and we can get paid. And so for those, we'll work out a referral arrangement. We'll sign a contract that we'll send a percentage of the fees that we collect on this net. We'll send that over to them as a referral fee. And so that's an easy one to do. What it gets harder, but we can always solve it. What gets harder is when you've had the client under contract and you are their contracted sell-side advisor. And then the question is well, how does CTC get paid? Because there's myself, there's different attorneys, law firms that need to get paid, and the trustee and the appraiser. And the overall cost for an ESOP is not cheap. It's usually less expensive than the sell-side advisor's fees, but it's certainly not going to be cheap. And then we just, each one has to be customized to look at what we can do. Now, I've done some deals where the sell-side advisor is making $1 million and they just cut out a portion of that to pay for the team that's going to come do the ESOP. I've got another one that I'm working on right now where I said, look, your fees are skinny enough and that certainly the value is there. Let's not trim your fee at all, and let's just put the client needs to pay for the ESOP, and let's just run the numbers to show them, because of the tax savings they get with the ESOP and because the costs to implement the ESOP were born out of the company cash flow. They're not paid out of the seller proceeds that you get. And because of that, this is not really a huge burden that's going to be taken on. But we've got to pay both, because for me, it's very important. The sell-side advisor needs to get paid. They've worked for up to 2 years on this client, and they need to get paid for the work that they've done, and they should. I'm a big believer of that. But the team that comes in and does the ESOP, it's a busy marketplace. And if I can't pay them the normal rates, both mine and all the attorneys, then they just won't do the deal. And so, but the value is there. The client's going to have a great transaction, and it's just figuring out what's the best way to pitch it and sell it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that brings me to my next question. How do you have that conversation, with your client, and I guess the fee discussion as it relates to an ESOP, but also transitioning from, the normal course of action is just a sell side, engagement to an ESOP. Like how does that conversation go with the client, and what are the things that you can give our listener to, kind of good to know kind of things to kind of bridge that gap and have that conversation?
Yeah. I think part of it is thinking about the end in mind. Is I like to use numbers and to say, client, we promised, or our target is to sell your business for, I'm going to throw out a number, for $10 million. And you would net after taxes $7 million. Well, we propose that you sell your business for $10 million to an ESOP. Maybe this could be 9.5, but it'll be around the same range. It's fair market value. But if we make the tax election, you will keep 9.5 million. You won't keep 7 million, because there's this thing called 1042 under the tax election for ESOPs to defer, potentially avoid the taxes. That's probably another podcast where we can get into that, how that works.
I'd love to dive into that.
Yeah, pretty cool. So we can say, client, we can do this, but as part of that, so you can keep the 9.5 million or $10 million, there's some additional costs borne by the company, and do that. But we're still delivering to you all that we talked about and promised when we started this process 2 years ago. It's a little bit different path. It's a more costly path. More lawyers are involved, but it's a great solution, and we think it's the best one out there for you. And so as long as we focus on not what's the initial cost, but we're delivering the results that we promised, it's a little bit different path, but we got to get some more lawyers involved, but we're certainly delivering the value there, then the client should be should be accepting of it. No client
Mm.
says, "Hey, more fees, I love it, let's do it." But it's just got to be done by end result. Here's what we're delivering.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. So that's the initial conversation probably M&A advisor has with their client. And, let's say client's receptive, right? Um, then is that next step to bring you with the advisor and the client to talk about what's next, or how does that go?
Yeah, this is really important. Is when to bring in CTC and Jeremy Huish to talk about it, because I'm not an expert in all things M&A. I'm really good at ESOPs, and I know that space well, but I can't pretend that I know everything in, let's say, pharmaceutical M&A, and I can't be the expert in there. If you're going to try to have a conversation about ESOPs, I would recommend earlier on bringing me in, because what will happen, and I've seen deals fall apart on this. The M&A advisor goes to the client and says, "Oh, let's consider an ESOP as an alternative." And then they try to have an hour-long conversation with the client on ESOPs, and the client's going to ask them questions they don't have answers to. And if the client doesn't get answers right then, they get frustrated. They say, "Oh, this is too complicated." And then they walk away. Well, the reason why it's complicated is because they don't get the answers.
Mm.
But if I can be there for that initial conversation and I can answer all their questions, show them a quick PowerPoint, show them some boxes and some arrows and how it works out, then the success rate is very high. And so here's what I would recommend for the M&A advisor. Let's first have a discussion with me about it. And then just so we can get some talking points, and then go to the client and say, "Client, I think something we should consider is an ESOP as a potential buyer for this. There's some awesome benefits." And the client says, "Oh, well, tell me about it." And say, "Let me get an expert on the phone and let's spend an hour and answer all your questions." But I would rather that the M&A advisor just spend 5 minutes and avoid trying to answer all their questions and
Mm-hmm.
just get me on the phone, because you'll have a much higher success rate there than to say, "Let me tell you all about it as an M&A advisor," and pretend like you're an ESOP expert. And then the client will get frustrated because they don't know it. Again, I've seen deals not go forward because clients say it's too complicated.
Yeah. Just hearing you give that explanation, makes a lot of sense to build a rapport, build a relationship with someone like yourself. And over time, obviously, you get to know each other, get to know what each other does, and build that relationship. So, you can have easier conversations on the front end related to ESOP and vice versa. And so bringing someone in like yourself, a couple of times, having regular contact, getting to know each other better, and just like we do with our referral sources, right? Like I see it very similar to, someone like yourself in the ESOP space, that let's have a relationship with someone, so we know more about it and then feel comfortable as an option to bring you in as an example, to help these clients that you've spent a year and a half, 2 years with. I think that makes a ton of sense. I would imagine that's something that you currently do.
Yeah, and I think for many people, the way it works out is, look, most of their clients won't go ESOPs for these M&A advisors, but maybe one a year, one every other year that comes through, or just on occasion. But they'll need someone that's their go-to person that they can pick up a phone and get an answer in 5 minutes, versus
Mm-hmm.
trying to fish around and Google the internet and what's this thing about an ESOP and how would this actually work. And so what I'd like to be is just their outsourced person. I don't charge. Just pick up a phone, give me a quick call. I can give them an answer. And
Mm-hmm.
then when the opportunity comes to partner on something, hopefully I'm their go-to person for that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's great. Jeremy, this has been a lot of great information. I appreciate you joining. Anything else you want to add that we haven't covered?
Well, I think to keep within the timing, we should no, I mean, just say grateful for the opportunity to be part of your network, Nick, and to speak to your audiences that you have out there, and hopefully we can do some more work together in the future.
Yeah. We'll have to do another episode, version 2, on that tax savings.
That would be fun.
So where can for our listeners, if they want to talk to you, find you, connect with you, where can we send them?
Oh, sure. So I'll give my website and phone number. So website is corptc, corptc.com. That's short for Corporate Transition Consulting.
Mm-hmm.
And my phone number is 202-210-0626. I'm also on LinkedIn, and
Awesome.
or they can reach out to you.
Yep, I can reach out to me. I can connect them with you as well. Again, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today. And that is all we have for this episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast. One thing that'll help Jeremy and myself out is, if you can like, share, comment this episode. We are now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, but you can find all of our episodes at cornerstoneia.com/podcast. Hopefully this was beneficial. You leave this listening to this episode with a couple of takeaways and a new understanding, or maybe a re-energized understanding of what ESOPs are and how they can help clients when the situation is right, and how they can work together. So appreciate you joining us. Until next time, take care, everyone.